All right. Hey, Sarah. Thank you for joining me on Coding Chats with Callie. How are you?
Oh my goodness. Thank you for having me. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing really good. I wanted to chat with you because I was super impressed with you through the Deploy in Public Challenge. And then every time I learned more about you, I was just like even more impressed. Like I had no idea you were a mom of two, or like you used to be in medicine, and like it was you like hadn't really done like a lot of coding before too, right? So I guess
No.
back like way up, what was your first career?
Okay, so first career was a nurse practitioner. So I went to nursing school, graduated back in 2011, and then just went straight into grad school because I just knew that I wanted more autonomy than nursing. So I got my nurse practitioner degree.
That's
And
intense though, right?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
They don't normally recommend just going like straight through. And I can see why now, like 10 years on the other side of it. But yeah, I just kind of like I just went for the grind. And so did that and then knew I wanted to do emergency medicine too. Like I've always just kind of been
Okay.
bent towards that, like the
It
high
seems like you picked the
adrenaline.
most intense option.
Yeah, definitely. I
Okay.
could I could have I could have just done primary care. That might have been like I might not have burnt out quite so fast if I had done something like that. But I liked the idea of not knowing what was going to come at me for the day. Like you don't know what's
Very
going to walk through the
cool.
door. Like you're thinking more on your feet. It's kind of fast paced and you just get to see a huge variety of things. So
So how did you go from nurse practitioner to learning to code?
yeah, totally randomly, honestly. So, after I had kids, I dropped down to part-time. So I was like super part-time as a nurse
Okay.
practitioner at that point. Wasn't loving my career, wasn't like finding that job satisfaction that I thought I would get. And then randomly on Facebook, it like popped up with a calendar. Like an app like Skylight, where it's a program that you can like send pictures back and forth through an app, like to grandma, and it like pops up on her computer screen. But it's a calendar, and so you can use it for your family. So it's kind of like a command board, and
Okay.
so you can like add different events. And I was like, well, this would be a great way. My husband's still in medicine. Our schedule is not Monday through Friday. So anyway, this app was like $400, and I was like, surely I can do something. Like
Oh my
surely I could figure
goodness. I
something out.
love
And
this.
that's where it started was I just wanted to like have a calendar, a central calendar for our family to use. So I just kind of like did some digging and found a couple different resources, bought like a $60 Amazon TV,
Okay.
and then found an app, but I couldn't get the calendar to fit right on the screen. And so through
Oh,
the app, it said you can use like CSS rules. And I was like, well, what are CSS rules? And like
okay.
that's where it started. So I figured out like the rule that I needed to like shrink the calendar to fit on the TV. And then I
I
had to
love
hack
this.
the yeah, and then I had to hack the TV so it wouldn't like auto turn off. So then I had to like hook that up and like that's where it started. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, what else can I hack and like what else can I build? Um, and so it just started from there. I found Harvard CS50
Okay.
course.
Oh, so you take, oh yes, you're who I heard about it from. Yes.
So
Okay.
yes, so I did that through edX, and I think they do it through other like MOOC course format. So it's just like online, it's free, it's not for credit, but it's literally like the intro to computer science class that they teach at Harvard and have like taught for forever.
So cool.
So I just started going through that and just like learned the basics of programming and like the basics of binary and like how it kind of all works together. And it just, I tend to be obsessive when I do things. Like
Me
I'm
too.
full throttle. So I just like went nonstop with it.
Okay, yeah, I was a stay-at-home mom when I first started coding, and I like swear I ignored my child for like a few weeks there because I was like
For
so
sure. For sure. It was like every nap time, like anytime
yeah.
they were asleep, I was like pulling up my phone and like watching videos and like trying to figure more out. So,
Yeah, I'd be like sitting on the floor in the playroom, like writing some code while she's
yep.
like rolling around.
Yep, they won't remember it, so it's totally fine.
Too funny. So when did this change from like, okay, this is cool, I like learning about this to like, this is what I want to do, I want to study this, I want to do this for work?
Yeah. Well, I kind of like because I wasn't satisfied in medicine and like really hadn't like gotten that. I was looking for alternative careers where I could like still take my kids to school and like come home and like find stuff, but that also like would provide a reasonable salary. Like I wasn't just working at Target and then basically like my whole salary goes to a babysitter or
Yeah.
whatever. And so my cousin had suggested like learning Java through Code Academy.
Okay.
He should totally get a plug for Code Academy. He's put so many of us through that. And that's like when I really started learning like the basics of programming. And I was like, I really think I could do this for a career. Like it makes sense and I enjoy it. And I think it's something that it would provide more flexibility than medicine. It would give me kind of that stable, like Monday through Friday job.
Oh, totally.
But I would still
Especially if
get
you
to
get a
do like,
remote gig too.
yeah, which is like the dream, I know. But like, honestly, I would even take like an in-office gig if I could just to get started.
For sure.
But like, there's still kind of like that problem solving and like the algorithm part that like I did enjoy of medicine.
But no one's
Um,
dying. Well,
Hopefully
unless
not.
you're like,
That's the goal. I don't want to work for like, I don't know. I don't want to work for like an airline company where I could crash a plane or like, like the wrong code goes out. Like, I don't know. I want to work for like a very monotonous, like
yeah.
low key. Nobody's dying. Like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
worst thing
yeah,
that
yeah.
happens is I crash a website. So
Okay, very cool. So, okay, you did Code Academy
yeah.
and you
So I
learned
worked.
Java first
Yep.
then.
Yeah. So, and I think that I was just kind of happenstance because I really didn't know much about like the programming languages or what was popular or what was cool or like anything like that. I
Yeah.
just happened upon Java. And then I was kind of looking at the differences of like just self-teaching. And then I started looking up jobs and like what job requirements
Smart.
were. And I'm like, okay, what would I need to do to get a job in coding? And so I really went back and forth between like boot camps versus going back to school. And
Totally.
for me, I felt like boot camp is like so appealing, but I also wasn't sure I could commit the time to it. Like the
Yeah, it's
six
a
to
lot.
9 months full time because my kids are still at home. I'm like, trying to code while they're napping. I'm like, I don't think I can get like a good 6 hours a day in of like doing this to where it would be beneficial. So I felt like going back to school actually made more sense for us because we're flexible on our timeline. It's not like I have to get a job within a year. And I could just kind of slow chunk away at classes and then just kind of
And
see
your
where it
classes
goes.
seem so cool.
They're so cool. They are so freaking cool. Like, oh my gosh, we can go into that. But like that's been really fun. And kind of like the weird like benefit of that too is like um, so in Tennessee, my husband works in the ER, but
Okay.
you can't be employed by the hospital as a physician. So through a management company. So we get no benefits. Like there's no
I hate
retirement,
that.
there's no health insurance, there's no time off, there's no nothing. So we just had to buy our insurance off the marketplace. But once I started going back to school, my husband figured out that we qualify for student health insurance. So
Nice.
if you do like all your classes online, you don't qualify. But if you take one class in person, you can get student health insurance. So that's what made me like go into the classroom, which I was mortified to do. I'm like, I'm going to be a solid like 18 years older than like
You
most
look
of the
very
students
young
in the
though.
class. Well, thanks. But like I'm not. Like the goal is to hopefully finish this before 40. And so I was like, these kids are gonna think I'm like so old and outdated and like this dinosaur in their class. But it's been phenomenal. And it's been so great to have that like
Nice.
person to person interaction. And it's like, I'm genuinely stuck. What do I do? And then to have that, help right next to
What
you.
are most people, because you're doing a master's degree, right? What are
Yes.
most people in your classes like? What is their like? Did they do CS degree for
It's
bachelor's?
so varied. There's
Okay.
only one person. So, and super small sample size because the class I'm in, there's 8 of us.
Okay.
And so it is
That's
a
nice
master's.
though.
Yeah. So it is a master's level class. Um, there's one student that was a CS undergrad.
Okay.
The guy that sits next to me, he was civil engineering, but he's been doing software development for the last couple of years. So
Oh,
that's
okay.
why he's coming back. There's like a couple PhD math students that are taking the class.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then like a couple other, most of the rest are engineering students. one of the other guys was in class with me in the spring, and he was a communications major, and kind of like me was like, I can get a job as a communications major. I'm just going to
Yeah.
go back and get a computer science degree. So he's just like a total change. So yeah, very varied. Like it's not just computer science people
Okay.
background.
What is the like dream role for you or like industry within the industry? Or do you even have any idea at this point?
I don't know. I feel like I'm still kind of exploring all the options. And I think the more I like meet people, the more I'm like, I didn't even know that was a career
Yeah,
possibility in tech. But like the thing that I genuinely enjoy is like programming and probably like the back end development side of things. Like I still don't like building out websites and like user interactions and that type of thing.
yeah, I
Um,
know.
but but I mean that being said, like I'll take my first job where I can take my first job. Programming would just be writing code. I think kind of a niche that I have is the medical background. And so working with like EMR systems would give me like a pretty unique perspective to come in as a programmer, but also having the clinical side of working with EMRs for 10 years and like
Totally.
knowing things. I had one of the hospitals I worked with, we were the first persons to, or the first place to roll out an EMR system. And so when I left that job, I had just randomly was talking to IT and they're like, oh yeah, we have so many requests for change. Like it's in the 10,000s. We will never be able to like fix all the bugs because they have to like test every single one of them to see if it's even like possible to fix. And so I was like, that's where somebody clinical could really come in and help be like,
Yeah,
yeah, that's annoying, but it's not necessary. Like we can just move on from that rather than spending the resources of like fully deep diving into everything. So
for sure. Are you doing like job looking or anything like that while you're completing your degree? And when's the timeline for your degree?
yeah, before 40. So but
I like this goal.
right now I'm taking like 1 to 2 classes a semester, like super low. Now once both kids are in school next year, maybe I'll take more. But right now we're looking at like spring 27 or like summer 27. So like a good 2.5 years out.
That's kind of cool though, because sometimes, I mean, like, this is like a privileged thing to say, but like sometimes I'm like, I spend all day coding at work that like sometimes there's things that I want to like do or learn that I just don't have time for outside of work.
Yeah.
And I'm like, sometimes I think back to the days where I just spent all day like building whatever I wanted, you
Yep.
know?
And learning. And like I had like, I don't know if it's a blonde moment or we'll just call it like a super naive tech moment, but to log on to like the supercomputers, we have to like SSH into it, which I only knew about from taking the challenge. I was like, SSH, I've got this.
I
Like I have it
love
all set
this.
up. But then like me being a dummy, like it said you had to log in through the VPN. Well, I didn't realize you didn't have to do that if you were on campus. Like you can just use the
Oh
regular
yeah.
Wi-Fi. Yeah, so I like waltzed into IT and I was like, I can't get the VPN to work. And they're like, yeah, you're on campus. You don't need the VPN. And I was like, okay, well, add that to my list of things to learn. So I like signed up for the Cisco Networking
Oh, I love
Academy,
that.
like networking. I'm like, I clearly need to know more about like networks and how this works. So
Networking is so hard. I feel like every time we get something and then someone's like, I think it's a network issue, then like my eyes glaze over.
like, oh, don't call me. But
Okay.
yeah, but like it's just having that flexibility to be like, yeah, I can just like pick this up and I'll learn it for right now because I do have like extra chunks of time here and there. So, um, truthfully, what I would really like is to get an internship maybe next summer,
Okay.
or the spring after that. Um, and then, you technically don't have to graduate with a degree to get a job. So, as
Right.
long as
I
you're
have no computer
enrolled,
science degree.
yeah. So I think even just having it on my resume that I'm in the master's program, I
Oh,
think
for
my
sure.
application will still, hopefully, we'll see what the job market looks like, at least make it through.
Yeah.
So maybe after internship, that's when I'm going to start really looking at like applying and seeing what's out there. We have a lot of tech companies in Chattanooga, and I'm pretty fortunate to have some friends in those companies. So I'm
Oh,
hoping that
nice.
like as time unravels. One of our friends is 22. And so I'm like, by the time you're 25, I need you to be my manager. I need you to hire me as an intern and be my manager.
Sure.
So
No, I think you're in a good spot though, because you can take the time to learn everything deeply and you're not like super stressed out about finding a job. And like,
right,
I think the market will hopefully be a lot better like
right.
over the course of the next few years, you know? So like, I think you can probably be pickier too with what you do take on.
That's what I'm hoping. And it is a super like privileged thing to say is like, I'm not like on a time crunch. So I fully get that, but I'm fully appreciative that I have that flexibility too. So
Very cool. So what are you working on now? Like, what's the exciting project you're doing?
I'm not really working on any projects per se. I'm trying to keep my head afloat with some of these homework assignments. Our one professor, his favorite thing to do is just have us define terms out of the textbook, like 70
Okay.
terms every week. So
Like
like my
write them
last
down?
yes, yes. And so
Okay.
like so last week my homework that I turned in was 14 pages long for like a 1 week assignment. So a lot of my life is just like writing out terms of computer theory. So if you want to know anything about like parsing and syntax trees and typed
I want to know
systems,
all of those
like
things.
I know it is actually really fascinating. I just don't want to sit there and type it out. I want to program. Um, but
No, honestly,
the
I think that's going to be so helpful though, because I legit keep a notebook by my desk and then I go in these meetings and every other word's a word I've never heard before. And I'm seriously writing and then like Googling and like defining the words later. So like,
yes.
these are probably the list of words that you're, you already
If
have
you
a
have
notebook
any
for.
questions, send them to me. I've probably got a definition written for you somewhere. So, or I will in the next couple weeks.
Do you feel like learning all of the theory and all of like the background is being really helpful towards like when you do work on something coding related?
I do because I feel like I understand more of the foundation of why we do the things that we do and why certain languages are the way that they are and like the differences in compilations and optimizations and things like that, where I wouldn't have had any clue before. Um, so I do think it helps a lot. It just kind of gives you that deeper understanding of why you'd make things public versus private versus static and like what it's doing on the backside, of the compiler and how it's interpreting
Very
all that.
cool.
So yeah. My
So, with
yeah.
that being said, do you have a favorite language?
Uh Java is the one I'm most comfortable with. I mean,
Okay.
but I don't like love it. I can do the most in it just because I understand
Okay.
it the most. So for our other class, it's parallel algorithms, which is so interesting. And I had to learn C++ for that. And I kind of like C++.
Okay,
I
what
just
do we
feel
like
like
about C++? Plus plus?
I like the fact that you can do more things like with memory and like with
Oh, cool.
pointers and references and
Okay.
aliases and things like that.
Very
So
cool. Go has
yeah.
pointers, and I found them like it's something that like I feel like I can understand the concept, but then when I'm going to code, I feel like I have to look it up every single
Oh,
time.
for sure. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I still look up everything all the time. But yeah,
Like,
I
do I need
really
a pointer here? Do I not? What
do I
symbol
not
do I use
I
for
know.
this
What is
again?
a pointer again?
Yeah.
Let's go back to the to the definition.
Very cool. So do you feel like you get like a lot in all of these different languages or like
No.
no?
Yeah, so I feel like I for the most part, like the school, I think I got lucky because like their basic was Java as well. And
Okay.
so I had already known Java, but that's what like the first two classes were was like Java 1, Java 2. Supposedly we're getting into Python, which I know a little bit about Python. I know enough to get around it, but I haven't like programmed big in it. Um, but they tend to use more of like the old school ones like C++. They said today, I think it's mechanical engineering uses Fortran for like all of their coding, which I thought was interesting. So, but other than that, like it's not a lot of exposure to like all the different languages, which in theory, like we're learning about the languages, but we're not coding in them. And you realize how many languages there are. It's like, holy
Yeah.
crap, like there's so many more than you realize. So
do you think that like, so what do you think you will do? Or I guess, how do you feel then about like job readiness with just the degree?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we'll know more as we get closer. Um, but yeah, that's kind of one of my concerns. And I know it's always, I see it on LinkedIn a lot, is like, do you stick with one language and just become like an expert in it, or do you try to like increase your stack a little bit and like, explore different languages and stuff. So, I'm not
Yeah.
sure. I think we'll find out.
Yeah, I first like before this current job I'm in, I would always be like, it doesn't really matter what language you code in, just like pick one and just kind of go. And then you can always like
Right.
get a job in another one. But like, I don't know, there's so much about like Go that I'm learning now that I'm like,
Yeah.
if I was writing this in JavaScript, I feel like I could really nail this task.
Yeah.
Whereas like
Yeah.
there's like choices to be made, and I'm like, I
Right.
just don't know Go well enough. And like that's what my mentors are there for. But like, so yeah, I guess with more experience, I'm kind of changing my answer a little bit more.
Right. And I
Yeah,
feel like it's hard because you just don't know like what job you're gonna get and what tech stack they're gonna use. So
yeah. And
it's
then
it's
like
challenging.
what if there's no jobs in the tech stack that you like, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so just kind of being willing to be flexible. So yeah. I randomly met this like mom who we already had a connection because our kids went to preschool together, but we just like had never crossed paths. And she's actually going for her undergrad in computer science.
I love that.
Yeah, but she was saying they mostly use Java too. Like they don't use a lot of the other languages. So a little bit of script, but like mostly Java. And it's like it's interesting because I don't really see, at least when I've just like looked at job boards, briefly,
Hmm.
Java does not seem to be like the primary language that people are like looking for. So I don't know.
Yeah. One time I did get an interview about a Java job, but it was because the recruiter didn't understand the difference between Java and JavaScript. And so they like offered PostgreSQL, but I was like, I don't actually know Java. Like
She's
you
like,
could consider me.
it's gotta be the same language, Java, JavaScript. It's all, it's all
Yeah,
copy.
that always makes me giggle. What
That's
I'm curious
funny.
about your professors, and I don't know if you would know this, but like, what are your professors' backgrounds in terms of like, what did they were they always in academia, or did they like come from software development?
I'm not sure. So I would wager that the professor I have now probably worked a little bit in software development, but he like has his own textbooks that he's written. So I would say he's probably more primarily academia. Um, yeah, and I don't know about the other one what their background is. I haven't Google stalked them yet. I guess I should.
How many courses are you taking at a time?
I'm doing two this semester. I did one over the summer, and that was a really bad decision because it was an accelerated course to begin with. So it was a 2 semester course, but then accelerated into a 6 week summer class.
That sounds
That was a
very
bad.
difficult.
That was a bad decision. That was a really bad decision.
Was it really hard?
Yeah, so that was the one where we built a computer, like we built our virtual computer. So like
That's crazy.
starting with like the logic gates and then like moving up into registers and RAM and then like our CPU. And then that's where we like built our compiler and our assembly language and like all that. Um, there were supposed to be like 12 projects. They dropped the last three because the last two projects were, or two of the last projects were like writing the compiler and then like translating it into assembly. And like you had 3 days to do it. So they were like, we're just gonna, yeah, this isn't enough time. Like there's just no way that you can write this in 3 days. So they dropped the last three projects, which was helpful, but it was still that I'm not gonna do a summer class like that again. So
I'm curious why they would offer like a two
me
semester
too.
class in
Yeah.
the summer.
Me too. Because I was like, okay, well, this must be a pretty like straightforward class if it's offered during the summer. And
Yeah.
then I got into it and I was like, this is not.
And so are
So,
your kids like the only time you have away from your kids is napping right now?
so no, so our oldest started kindergarten. So that's
Okay.
actually been like a huge change because now she's in school from like 8 to 3.
Nice.
And then our younger one she goes to like a Mother's Day out program. And so she
Ooh.
goes like 3 hours on Monday, Wednesday, Fridays.
Oh, nice.
So
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So we're past naps just dropped suddenly, and that was really sad. So we're
We haven't had naps in a while.
oh,
About
I
it,
loved.
but it's because she goes to daycare, so I'm not sad about it because she's only with me for a few hours a day during
True,
the
true.
week.
Yeah. So you don't want her napping during that time. Yeah. Yeah. So next year, our kids are like 15 months apart, which was not the
That's
plan and
nuts.
would not recommend that to most people. But so next year they'll both be in school because they'll be kindergarten and first grade. So I'm hoping that maybe next year I can add some more classes in, maybe do 3 at a time. But I will say this, like my cohort, the other students, they're taking 3 classes this semester, and they were telling me today that they're like dying, like they are barely staying afloat. So I was
Mhm.
kind of like, 2 classes might be my
Yeah.
max. So
Well, I think it's easy. It's better to like have the time to deeply learn everything too. One of my grievances with boot camp is it's like it's just so quick. Like
yeah,
you just have enough time to like figure out how to get the assignment like kind of working before
yeah,
the assignment comes. Like you don't even have time to get it like bug free, you know? So like, there
yes,
were so many things that like I didn't even like fully get, and then we were like moving on. So I don't know,
yes,
sometimes I feel like it's better. And now that like we're older, I feel like we actually care. Cause like when I was like in high
right,
school, I was like, oh, I just want to get the assignment done. But like now I
exactly,
feel like if I went back to school, it would be different. I would be like, I actually want to read the whole chapter and like do the
yes.
assignment and look up other things. So
And I've kind of always been like that. That's why I actually went to nurse practitioner, is because when I was doing like my nursing clinicals, I remember asking like my preceptor, I'm like, why are we giving this medication? They're like, well, the doctor ordered it. And I was like, yeah, but why wouldn't we give this other medication? And they're like,
mhm.
because the doctor didn't order it. And I'm like, that's not good enough for me. Like, I want to know why. Like, I've always wanted to know, like, I'm not just satisfied with the answer. I want to make sure I understand like the reasoning behind the answer.
Well, then
So
you are in a good field for that.
I don't know if I'll ever understand it all. It's like the more I learn, the less I feel I know. Like, oh, I
That's
finally just got,
definitely true. Yeah.
yeah.
At some
So,
point, you just have to accept that like you're never gonna know everything, and you're just
yeah.
like learning all the time.
Yes, yes, which I'm actually okay with. My
For
parents
sure.
have always joked that if I could be a professional student, that's what I would do for a career. Like I would just
And
always
honestly,
be
I think it's
learning.
the closest thing. Like, I feel like a lot of times
Yeah,
you get paid like several hours a day to learn something. Because every
that's
time you get an assignment too, like you don't, I mean, very rarely do you know how to do 100% of like the ticket that you get assigned to do.
that's
So,
good to know too, because I feel like, when you talk about like job readiness, I feel like that's kind of always in the back of my mind, is like, when will I know that I'm ready? Like, what skill level will I need to have? Like, do I need to understand everything on a job ticket? Or is it just like, do I need to understand where to look for it and then how to implement it?
yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think like the skill set is more so like knowing how to solve a problem than like knowing like exactly what the solution is, because
yeah,
every single ticket is going to be different, and it's like it's the roller coaster every single time of like
right.
I'm not really sure what this ticket is asking me to do to let me to like, oh, okay, yeah, that wasn't that bad, but then like they don't give you the same ticket twice, you know.
Right. It's like, crap, I had that one last week.
Yeah. Well, Sarah,
So
thank you so much
funny.
for talking with me. Is there anything you want to like
Yeah.
plug or have people like, I don't know, a link you want people to go to?
I got nothing. I don't have a website. I don't like, my GitHub is like pretty sad. So no, but thanks for having me. I mean, if I'm going to plug anything, I'm going to plug coding with Callie,
Aw.
because legitimately, like just doing the deploy in public, which was kind of crazy on my part, like really having
Yeah,
no
while you were doing
experience.
that summer class too.
I was really crazy. But it really did like prepare me, like some of like the topics we learned in the basics and the foundations. Like I've been able to help other students like answer questions. I'm like, oh, I already did that this summer, so let me show you how I did it. So
Oh
it
yeah, I'm so glad to hear that.
hugely, hugely helpful. So can't wait to have a little bit more time so we can do like the build in public one. That's the one I'm actually really excited to get my hands on.
Oh yay! Well, I'm excited to see what you build and what like if you liked as much as deploy in public. I was
Oh
super
yeah.
impressed with you in deploy in public. You were like always like one of the first to turn it in every single week,
I'm
and
just an overachiever.
no, I love it because I feel like there's like, I don't know, like so many people are like, I want this so bad, but then it's like so many people don't finish, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like to a certain extent, it's like you try something and then you're like, all right, this isn't for me, go on. So like, I don't think it's bad people didn't finish, but I'm very impressed with the people who did.
Well,
Um,
thanks. And I will say, I think that was a huge help too. Is like people like Dan and Claire, like having them to like talk to and
mhm.
go through with, like huge help. So it was just a fun cohort. It was like a fun group of people to like go through that with. So
Oh, yay.
yeah, it was
All
fun.
right. Well, I will let you get back to your evening. Thanks for chatting with me and it was
Sounds
fun.
good. Thanks, Callie. Bye.
Bye.